Hello and welcome back. We got one round left tonight. I'm Randy Bueller. I'm joined by first place, Reed Duke. You're going to be feeling pretty good with the 2-1.
I do, yeah. I don't feel, a tremendous sense of accomplishment given that my deck was fairly boring and I just drew really, really, really well all night. But being first place in the league is awesome, means a little bit of the pressure off for the last trimester, and I can kind of cut loose a little bit in terms of deck choice if I want.
I like the sound of that. That sounds great.
Yeah.
I haven't seen you play a card with the word storm on it yet. Well, we certainly have. Maybe you played a Flusterstorm, but I forget about that. We certainly haven't seen you play a Tendrils of Agony deck yet, which I know you've shown some affinity for over the years.
Yeah, I do have a ton of fun playing that, and maybe I'll see what I can come up with in that category for the third trimester.
You got a weekend
no promises.
Off. Maybe even further afield. Anyway, nice job. You are 5-1 on the season, and you are the only player at 5-1. So you did pick up your first loss, but everybody else has at least 2 losses at this point. That's what the top of the standings looks like. Meanwhile, toward the bottom of the standings, we do have Dave and Kevin. Kevin 2-0 on the night, trying to actually get back into the thick of things at 3-3. David's still trying to pick up his first win. Now, Dave seems a little pessimistic about this matchup. He's like, oh, Kevin's got all these Swords to Plowshares. I'm not going to be able to grow my Managorger Hydra ridiculously. But isn't the Miracle Grow versus bigger blue deck typically in favor of the Miracle Grow side of things?
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I think maybe Dave was just a little down in the dumps in general after having lost the first one here.
You can tell. You can sometimes tell whether he lost or won the match before he does commentary. That's fair.
It made sense to me when he was saying he felt he had a bad matchup against the Workshop deck. But just a fair blue matchup does seem kind of like what his strategy is geared for, and it's possible he can just out-muscle Kevin in terms of card drawing and put those powerful Miracle Grow-esque creatures to use.
Yeah, it's funny. I actually think his matchup against the Shops decks was better back when there were a bunch of Thorn of Amethysts, almost slowing things down for both players. But your version of the Shops deck, which is pretty stock, but the Shops decks nowadays, so many creatures. You had a turn 3 kill through an 8/8 blocker and 2 strip mines.
Yeah.
You lost a land every turn, and Dave played an 8/8, and you still just killed him on turn 3.
Yeah, that was that was certainly one of my best draws, but I understand what you're saying in terms of I wasn't trying necessarily to lock Dave out of the game. Right. I actually would have been happy if we just got into this fair creature battle where I can use my Ravagers with the XX creatures, and I brought in Steel Overseer and stuff like that. And Dave's deck just didn't have that much removal, so I'm like, if I could just play Modern Affinity against Modern Jund, kind of. I know how that matchup goes, and the Ravagers and the Steel Overseers usually just outpower it.
All right, well, we got one match left. Let's go see if Dave can get off the schneid or if Kevin can finish the 3-0. All right, here we go. Kevin's pumpkin spice deck is allegedly only going to be around for a couple of weeks, but I don't know. Maybe they'll keep it around longer if he manages the 3-0. Dave does have that Managorger Hydra in his opener with the ability to cast it on the first turn, and then and follow it up with 2 Moxes and a Baral.
Yeah, Dave can produce 5 mana on turn 1 and play both of his creatures if he likes.
Neat.
Oh, and he is on the play too. So, I have to imagine Kevin's gonna just go ahead and force the Hydra. It's he could try to find Swords to Plowshares, but that thing does not give you a lot of time to play around.
Yeah, no, that's a Snap Force of Will. I know Kevin's been a big fan of Managorger Hydra over the years. Was super excited to see it come out to play tonight, but he knows what it's capable of. And that's definitely a Snap Force of Will.
Kevin's draw was virtually perfect for a blue mirror match like this, but having to cast Force of Will on turn 1 makes it not so perfect, as it's going to be a while before the library gets online.
Yeah, library on the draw always feels great until you have to play that Force of Will. All right, he preordains. He sees a Tundra and something. He's got the Hercules, which is not exactly for this matchup. I guess he needs that Tundra. Turns on turn 2 Spellqueller at least. And he's going to guard it from Wasteland by leading with a library that's not exactly great, given that he had to force. What do you think of Dave's decision to not play out Baral? He sort of slow rolled his Moxes.
So the advantage there would be if he draws one of his remaining 5 creatures that reward him for playing spells. And that does make sense to me, especially since he's so like heavy on mana. Once Brawl gets into play, there's not even that many sequences of cards where he's going to be short on mana next turn, and 1 damage is also fairly trivial. So I think, close decision either way, but he probably made the right one.
Used his Mystical on an Ancestral and was delighted, I'm sure, to see no misstep come out of Kevin's hand.
Yeah, that's a great turn there.
Man, I played a lot of Vintage in the years where you could Mystical for Ancestral, but misstep hadn't been printed yet.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot more. You felt a lot better Mysticaling for Ancestral at that.
In those days, it was like almost every deck played every available tutor, right?
Pretty much.
Merchant Scroll, Mystical Tutor, Vampiric Tutor, Imperial Seal. And it was pretty rare to see decks that didn't have both blue and black in them in Vintage.
Fair.
But that play pattern of tutoring for Ancestral, as you mentioned, once that became not sort of like a I win or I have an automatic huge advantage, it really did change how people built their blue decks.
Speaking of mental misstep.
That's huge for Dave getting the loot here, and another reason why he's rewarded for not playing out his Mox Pearl.
Very nice. Yeah, it comes home right here, huh?
Yeah, I think, maybe the looting ability of Baral should have been a tiebreaker in favor of Kevin fighting a little bit over that preordain. Like he could have spell quellered the misstep, for example. So just taking the step back and looking at the overall status of the league, really nice job to Kevin so far after the 0-3 start. And actually, he had the maximum pain of sitting at 0-3 from the first week of the first trimester all the way to the last week of the second trimester. But now, with a great showing tonight, he could just be completely live for to make the finals if he has a good week 3.
I mean, if he wins this, he's 1 match out of second place. Second place is a 4-2 record right now. I mean, it's a large tie, but that's all you got to do is get tied for it. If you tie for 4th, you get postseason magic of some form. We will do tiebreaker matches if it's not a clean cut to the top 4.
Have things ever broken in a way where like 6 people are all 5 and what would it be, 5 and 4?
Almost. We had one season where we were 1 match off of a 6-way tie for 4th place. It was literally 1 match off.
Wow.
It's funny. I saw it coming with 3 weeks to go. It's like 15 matches, and there was 1 permutation, and we went 14 for 15. But we have not had the massive tie. We've only ever had, I think, a 2-player tie. But we've been very close to some giant ties, and we'll figure out the format based on how many people are tied for it. So. It's fun. I'll definitely. I may play with some math once we get the records in and see what's possible.
Well, surely, if it's possible, that nobody runs away with it. Like if nobody gets above 6-3, then there's going to be some major clumping at the middle records.
I mean, we saw that coming into this week. Everyone was between 2-4 and 4-2. Nobody was better than 4-2. Nobody was worse than 2-4. Until now, you're now going to be the one person above, and Dave is going to be the one person below. Anyway, meanwhile, Kevin continues to not cast his Spell Queller and just kind of futz around, while seems like Dave should be futzing more effectively with Baral in play, and yet somehow he hasn't actually drawn into much business. A Force of Will that he can hard cast helps.
Yeah. So he really actually wants to counter something and help him draw into another action spell, because right now he's on the clock with his own Mana Crypt.
Yep. Yeah.
Already used his Perilous Voyage, which would be his one way to remove it from the battlefield in game 1. But here we go. This is just what Dave wanted to happen.
A spell. It's going to tap those lands for blue. There you go. All right, Deeproot Champion. Is that... He's going to have to draw some gas to outrace his own Mana Crypt with that, though.
Any card draw spell. That's what he needs here.
Flip says no damage this time. An island. It's crazy how bad David's draws have been all night. Where were these lands in the previous rounds? His first match, I think he drew a grand total of 1 land between the 2 games.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a wasteland. Like, he never drew a colored land. I was thinking, is this like the old Miracle Grow decks used to only play like 10 land, 4 land grant? But he's got, legitimately 15 land in his deck. It's just... And now this game, he can't find anything but. I don't know. This trimester has not been kind to the Deeproot Champion decks either. Right? Paul went 0-3 with his take on a Deeproot Champion Miracle Grow style deck. See where Dave lands.
Yeah. Do you think that Magic has just left this strategy behind, or do you think it's a little bit of a either bad metagame time for it, or just a fluke that these players have run bad?
I think going wide is better than going tall in Vintage right now. I think you've got the Workshop deck that can go wide and just swarm around your one giant creature. And the Pyromancer decks can come up with a billion chump blockers.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Obviously, there's only the one Mentor in the Mentor decks, but
Dave had highlighted the Managorger Hydra as really important for getting through those annoying chump blockers.
The trample helps. I think I like his version better than Paul's because of the Managorger Hydra, so I'll certainly give you that.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Meanwhile, Dave won another coin flip. Kevin chose to leave up Spell Queller instead of casting Jace last turn, but now this turn he's going for the Jace. I guess he hasn't played a land, so he can still get, he can get to Spell Queller with a land drop. I don't know. I love seeing the Deeproot Champion attempt. I mean, it feels like the right thing to try. It feels close, but yeah, I'm not convinced you can go large with a couple of creatures in Vintage right now.
Yeah, it matches up poorly against Swords to Plowshares. Also matches up kind of poorly against Walking Ballista, because the creatures have to come in as a 1/1 before they grow massive.
Yeah. Jace is not exactly good news. If you grow one, they get to 4
also
mana.
matches up poorly against Jace. That's true.
Such a fun strategy, though, and I think both of those guys were. I don't know. That extended PTQ season is probably before your time, but man, those Miracle Grow decks in extended, circa 2001-ish, such a great deck.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're both thinking with the nostalgic parts of their brains, I think, with these lists.
Yeah, and some long car ride recently, Huey was regaling me with stories of a Grand Prix where he was disrupting everybody's land grants.
Yep.
Down counter your land grant, I'll draw a card. You say go without playing anything.
And Deep Root Champion, I think, is clearly designed as a throwback to that Quirion Dryads.
Mm-hmm.
Dave's Mana Crypt stopped damaging him. That's the good news.
Yeah.
Bad
Although
news
it might wind up being just a little bit of torture here as he now dies the slow, painful death to a resolved Jace the Mind Sculptor. Not that he's dead. He does have a counter spell in his hand which can allow him to loot with the Baral, but Kevin has a lot of tools at his disposal.
Chooses not to force the Gush. I'd have been tempted just to get the loot there, but I guess he figures something else is coming. Something else is always coming on the Gush turn. Kevin is Spell Queller flooded? Is that a thing? All right. Plow your Deep Root Champion. Dave actually can force a will this, right? It's too expensive for Spell Queller.
Also.
He gets a loot out of it. He gets a +1/+1 counter out of it. This all makes sense. Kevin probably thought between the Quellers and the Snapcasters he was in decent shape here, but actually he could snap back a Force of Will.
Yeah. Oh.
He could spend 7 mana to hardcast Force of Will off a Snapcaster Mage, but it doesn't look like he's gonna.
I think what he should do is he should probably Snapcaster the Swords to Plowshares potentially in response to the Baral trigger.
I'll buy that. That seems way more efficient. Right, that lets him leave up Spell Queller, so. He already had your line figured out, looks like. Baral trigger on the stack. Dave does not get his loot yet. Here is Snapcaster targeting swords. And Spell Queller available on defense if Dave had a misstep or whatever. Man, another land. Dave loses the Mana Crypt flip. Down goes all that Swords to Plowshares life. You think there's any sequence that gets Dave back in this from here? Just feels like he's
no. He needed
behind.
to draw something this turn for the door to be open. At this point, I mean, Dave doesn't have any really expensive spells in his deck that can get through the Spell Queller. It would probably start with a Gush, right? Gush, has to find him 2 more cards. That's one of the few things that can't be countered by a Spell Queller or a misstep.
And Kevin refuses to play those Spell Quellers without value. I'm pretty sure I'd have a 2/3 in play by now, attacking. Don't you think? Your opponent's at 7 with a Mana Crypt. Spend your mana.
Spell Queller against Dave's deck in particular, the fact that he's blue-green, doesn't have any removal for the Spell Queller, probably makes it more tempting to hold it for value.
I guess. Would you have summoned one?
Yeah, I would have. I generally play a bit more.
He has another option here. Time lock turn coming.
Cast my spells, try to press my advantage when I have one.
Feels like Kevin hangs out with Steve Menendian too much. But Indian has never met a victory condition that he couldn't wait and hold on to, maybe discard. All right, he's going to time walk into Snapcaster the time walk. Snap something. Oh, I would assume time walk. I mean, you've got a planeswalker in play, right? Just keep taking turns. Yeah, Kevin agrees. Dave's like, fine, enough. All right, I haven't really looked at their sideboards with this matchup in mind. Anything exciting going to happen? Trigon's come in for Williams, I guess.
Potentially to block spell quellers.
Bouncing into each other. Hilarious.
A bone saw would be a real mirror breaker in this this matchup.
Oh, the moat. That's the other reason Dave has to bring in Trigons. That makes
great point. Sense. Yep.
I like moat and vintage right now. I think it's actually in a pretty good spot. I think it's a little underplayed. Especially so many of the, I don't know. I guess the real question with moat is how good is this against your deck? I think it's pretty good, but it's not quite game over because of the.
Can still win with Hangerback or Walking Ballista.
Basically, turns your deck into those two cards.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it is also a 4-mana non-creature against shops, which can be a tall order, but it's one of the cards that's most likely to win you the game once you get to that point.
Right. Yeah, it's in a similar spot against Dredge. Sometimes they kill you before you get to 4 mana, but they have a lot of trouble winning through it.
What do you think of Dave's 3 regrowths?
The card's good. I mean, it's another card I think is underplayed. I think certainly given what his deck is trying to do, right? The blue-green Miracle Growth style strategy, I like it a lot. The deck feels like it might be just a notch underpowered for where Vintage is at, though. I don't know. I've been playing old school lately where, I mean, I wish I had access to more than one regrowth. That would be amazing.
Right.
I don't even have access to more than one recall.
Well, in old school, I think the power level gap between your good cards and your bad cards is very large. So regrowth being another copy of Ancestral or Mana Drain or whatever it might be just sounds great.
It's true. Cool. Library of Alexandria. How do you feel about that? Off the top
man.
With your
and
own
that
draw.
That just matches up so well against Williams's hand.
Starting to feel a little bad for Dave.
Yeah,
this is not run well tonight.
He's not going to have fun in this game either.
The run goods all even out in the end, though, right? This means he's going to be successful on the poker table, maybe. Or, I don't know if he's got a Grand Prix coming up. However that works, he's due. That's a thing, right? Being due.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he did find the Wasteland off the top. That's not nothing.
All right, so now we are back to a fair game where Kevin has a fairly substantial advantage based on drawing a couple extra cards there. Dave's hand is very reactive. But Spell Pierce is going to wind up being pretty nice if Kevin just goes for a Jace.
Crazy. He's not gonna. Sitting on that Spell Queller again. And Dave's like, I really want to scry. I need land. Is Kevin going to Spell Queller the Perilous Voyage? That is not a play I expected to see tonight. He is. Spell Queller targeting Perilous Voyage. I think if you had that on your bingo card, you should be playing a bigger game than bingo. Crazy. I see the logic in Kevin doing it, though, because he gets to leave up both Flusterstorm and Force of Will. And Dave obviously cared enough about it to do it, so. So of course, we're going to play another game where Dave's mana just doesn't work out. Should build decks with a more in-between amount of mana in them, instead of this too many, too few. Kevin gets to see how painful Dave's draw is. So what's next for you? I know you said that you're not going to make it to Eternal Weekend. Is it the Pro Tour that's next up, or?
Yep, I'm going to fly out to the southwest and play Grand Prix Phoenix and then Pro Tour Albuquerque following weekend.
Makes sense. Yeah, I mentioned this earlier, by the way. For those of you watching, there is no Vintage Super League the week of Pro Tour Albuquerque. So 2 weeks from tonight, we have an off week. Makes sense. What do you think of the Pro Tour being so much longer after the release of the set, especially with a big event like Worlds happening already, to sort of feed the world with deck lists and tech?
Pros and cons. I've always really appreciated the formula of the Pro Tour being like a challenge for deck builders of, we have a very limited amount of time and who can find the best ways to use the new cards in that limited amount of time. I think it brings like an extra skill into Magic.
Yeah, all right. Dave's done. I was just looking at this, like that Spell Pierce has been sitting here waiting to try to counter Jace. He pondered, he still couldn't find land. So, yeah, I think Dave knows he's beat. Jace comes down, Jace resolving. There's no way Dave can come back from that. Just a super awkward series of draws for David. It's too bad. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, though. You should feel free to finish your thought.
Yeah, just, I like that when there's an outlet for the deck building skill somewhere in Magic, because you can, it is really, really challenging to build decks, and I like when it's rewarded, the people that work hard and cultivate that skill, whereas it is totally possible to like skate by as a successful player just by, having somebody hand you a deck or copying one off the internet.
Yep.
And that's fine. It's not bashing that, but it's cool to once in a while reward the people that go the extra mile.
I agree. I think those are they're different skill sets. Like being able to pilot a deck versus being able to design one, those just are different skill sets. So having the biggest tournament reward. But I mean, I think Worlds was a perfectly reasonable stand-in as the time to reward that deck building skill this time around.
And what's great about Magic is the variety, and I'm totally open to trying new formulas and new patterns for organized play and stuff. So let's keep an eye on how this Pro Tour goes. And if it winds up being really exciting, then we'll take it from there,
Fair enough. Well, good luck to you. We will see you again on the other side of the Pro Tour. And when you come back, we can look at the standings for tonight. Tonight, you put up the 2-1, not quite the 3-0 that Kevin Cron managed. There you see. But you did take the only one for team left side of the bracket. Mm-hmm. That was very exciting. So 2-1 for Reed Duke, 3-0 for Kevin Cron. It was Steve Menendian with the 1-2, and David Williams 0 and 3. Overall, we feed those standings in. Before this, we had a bunch of people at 4 and 2, a bunch of people at 2 and 4. Now a little more separation. Only Rachel sitting in the middle at 3 and 3. Kind of funny how that worked out. But now you're kind of on the left edge of this. David's kind of on the right. And we slot in Kevin in the middle. And Steve somewhere in the middle as well. Interesting. It's been a fun trimester. I like the mix. Oh, hello, Kitty.
Hello, Kitty.
I like the mix of decks. I think that We're going to all submit new decks now. Eternal Weekend is this weekend. If you haven't got your fix of watching Vintage, tune in. It'll be Vintage all day Friday and Legacy on Saturday, and then both the top 8s will be on Sunday. Vintage Super League will be back a week from now with new decks, new pairings. I don't know who's going to be playing yet because we haven't rolled up the schedule. Got to submit some deck lists first, and it'll just be random who shows up then versus the first 2 weeks of November. Anyway, thanks for hanging out, Reed.
Yeah, of course, Randy. Good luck at Eternal Weekend. I'll be watching and hope to see some cool stuff from you.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for watching. See you guys next week.